Nuclear developers, something unprecedented. Everybody greenwashed into new initiatives. Fuel cycle staged out, private floor all clinical. Fast track startup, make the risk look trivial. Test floor, shield wall, all the boys try. So baptized, DOE night lights, everybody so dead-eyed. Pilot run, first of a kind, sell it for a limited time. Critical by July, what price Anderson act like? Direct access to national nuclear expertise. Everybody to come, whole scene radioactive. Press shots, make the waste photogenic. Dress code, make disaster anthropogenic. Launchpad USA, wide-scale commercial deployment. Whole crew run deep, stay left, stay sleep. Nuclear launchpad, dead concepts, investors restless. Launchpad, fast-track enrichment innovation. Mox, fuel in my car. Come on baby, get strapped on. INL out back, haul yard, operational. Authorization chain, all optics intentional. Hot cell, sealed bay, whole mood, look commercial. Bury what you can't solve, then rename it essential. Fuel bay, boys, paper suits, dead optics, close circuit monitor. Whole process like narcotic. Launch that on my lips, make the rollout sound harmless. If the whole world pees later, they don't even wanna face it. Red lane, low tone, everybody too ready. Talking like a half-life, only hurts if you let a new core. Old waste stream, but Britain stay heavy. If it all goes first critical, they'll just call it legendary. Launchpad USA, commercial deployment. Whole crew run deep, stay left, stay sleep. Nuclear launchpad, dead concepts, investors restless. Fast track enrichment innovation. Nox, fuel in my car. Come on, maybe get strapped up. No one say waste stream, no one say routine, Vincent. Everybody says cool, clear is clean. Nobody wanna notice dry.
Hello everybody, welcome back. Welcome back. It's called Nuclear Energy Launchpad. I gotta like it. Are pro-nuclear, like you're kind of left with these questions sometimes. Are pro-nuclear evil degenerate scum because they work in an industry that demand they have no soul? Does that make sense? Because that's what we're seeing, right? Got my usual shit for brains. Give me a thumbs down. Every show. Max Bum Burner, Afterburner. It's not his real name, of course. Or Max. He's MK Ultra. He's an inbreed for the nuclear industry, for the military-industrial complex. It's the only way you can get to be a pilot, right? And he's glorifying the A-10 Warthog, but he takes it to a different level than we see for the typical scumbag. He actually acknowledges depleted uranium rounds, and he glorifies how they're going to be used on the militia and resistance and people in boats and stuff like this. These are not what depleted uranium munitions are actually for. Depleted uranium munitions were for hardened targets that nothing else can penetrate. But of course there's other, all they shoot is depleted uranium munitions, dual-ram, depleted uranium low-level radioactive material. That's all they actually shoot. And a lot of politicians have tried to stop them because these are absurd. They're absurd disease factors, is the only way you can describe them. And if you come over to my site, and like we're in the live section right now, right? So we're right here, we're live streaming. I got nobody, well, I got 12 wonderful people on my show. I'm going to play a clip of Lorraine Moret talking about a conference in Hamburg, Germany, where a Japanese physicist, done the mathematics on the amount of radiation released from the A-10 Warthogs, for instance. It's like several million Nagasaki bombs worth of radioactive fallout. And that's an important clip. I'm going to play that. And then we'll come back and we'll get into it. A crazy show tonight. It's Fukushima's 15th anniversary. And this is, you can watch this later on my please download this video. Of every video on my site, this is one. If you're not going to only download one video, this is the one it should be.
Estimates of depleted uranium weapons used in 1991 now range from the Pentagon's admitted 325 tons, and that's only bullets, to other scientific bodies who put the figure as high as 900 tons. A Warthog shoots 1.5 tons of bullets in 1 minute. In the 2003 Gulf War, estimates of 2,200 tons have been given. One of the Japanese physicists who came to our Hamburg conference calculated that 800 tons of depleted uranium, if it's released into the air, is the atomicity equivalent, or the equivalent number of radioactive atoms, as 41,000 Nagasaki bombs. We have released over 250,000 Nagasaki bombs, equivalent radiation, into our atmosphere. But what's even more alarming is that the McAllister bomb factory in Oklahoma, McAllister, Oklahoma, was applying for relicensing at the NRC in order to be able to continue manufacturing DU weapons. And in order to maintain level 1 status, which they have to do to get relicensed, they must be able to ship 1,600 tons of depleted uranium weapons a day. That's 166,000 Nagasaki bombs of radiation. It's 20 train car loads of DU going out of that factory every day. It's only one of 4 U.S. Army bomb factories. And altogether, at all 4 bomb factories at any one time, they are allowed by the NRC to have up to 44,000 tons of DU on site. That's 4.5 million Nagasaki bombs.
4.5 million a day on those sites because of the production criteria. If that don't frighten the daylights out of you, what does, I wonder? People like this is why the world has no hope, right? He's live streaming right now as we talk, by the way. Just bear with me. I might not be able to find what I want. I was just searching for it. So the government a few years ago had put out tenders, invited tenders to bid on disposal of 36 million depleted uranium munitions. These are dirty bombs. Depleted uranium munition, if you take it and wrap it in conventional explosives and set it off in a community, then the radiation is considered a dirty bomb. Like in Fallujah or Basra in Iraq, 84% of the women, babies, were so disfigured from the depleted uranium. And people like, he's actually a passenger plane pilot now. Imagine a monster, and he's an actual monster, is flying people from city to city, and they have no concept. They have a serial killer for a pilot who's proud of it, who's unable to distinguish between good and right, good and bad, good and evil. He's refusing to accept, in order to justify his existence, so that, right, the only way people like this can justify their existence, they have to live in denial. Or they're completely degenerate scum. And I think he kind of qualifies for both of them. To come out and promote DU is just unconscionable. It's next level evil, eh? You got all the whales are emaciated from the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. We don't need, this is worldwide. Every species of whales you can imagine showing up starved to death. And actually bragging about using depleted uranium rounds to draft the resistance. I can guarantee you he wouldn't like it. Like if he had a family, which I don't think he's capable of having a family. He doesn't swing that way. The A-10 Thunderbolt can loiter for hours, standing by and ready to execute a mission whenever needed. So I'm going to send that, they're sending a whole bunch of them down there. They were supposed to be decommissioned because they are disease factories. And the emissions per minute is like 1.5 tons depleted uranium emitted. The stuff catches fire as it's going through the air. So it's burning radiation across the land, the water tables, the air. It's the most insidious thing imaginable. Go look at his video. He's live right now. I just want a record of that you get rewarded to be evil. Being evil, you get a big reward. He's got his producer does everything. He can't do jack shit himself when he be a degenerate on the TV screen. He has no skill at all. He can fly a plane, but that's a taxi. That's what he does for a living. He's a taxi driver of a plane. Big friggin' whoop. There's how many pilots on the planet? I think what makes him special is he doesn't care about life. He doesn't care about birds or animals or insects or fresh water. He cares about, he's doing this, look at him, he's got 6,000 people watching. And he's got a producer. I was reading the comments there earlier, trying to get a handle on it. You see, he got lots of comments. Everybody is there is going to kiss his ass. No descending voices. Let's give him a shout here. Hey. They call my live show and debate me on DU or are you a coward? His producer now will kick me off, right? Oh, look at him. Here's the Sarah to take some time off her Uber Eats schedule. Right, to keep it, like to make each other feel Like they're welcome there. Coward call me, can't debate plead uranium. I'm just gonna put, just so that in my conscience I could say I've done something. Hey, call me and debate. Of course, Max is too busy being a monster. He's a real life monster. And he's got too many comments there, you can't keep up with it. But he's got a producer in the comments section he was talking to. A producer of the live stream, a shit video on YouTube. Well, he was all worried about the map would lag on your end. But to get there and promote and glorify depleted uranium is just unconscionable. Now you can, the A-10 Warthogs, you got all these. It's shooting dirty bombs. Every munition is a dirty bomb. And the strafes, the dirty bombs. You know they're going to be in the communities, the cities. And for what? So he can go jet-setting around the country, pretending that he's a hero. He's not a hero. If you're promoting depleted uranium munitions against soft targets for starters, you're a war criminal. They're not made for that application. So you're promoting crimes against humanity on top of that by utilizing radioactive material. This is stuff left over from the weapons production. And so this is completely contaminated with plutonium and curium and americium and neptunium and strontium and americium. And I already said that, I think. Like there's over 1,000 isotopes, and there's nothing on the planet with an autoimmune trigger that can defend against these isotopes. But it infuriated me. Strike down those fast boats with depleted. You don't need depleted uranium rounds to take out motors, outboard motors or inboard motors. Why would you want to use depleted uranium on that? And then you're shooting it into the ocean on top of that. But they're also talking about hunting resistance around Iran and that. They're going to contaminate the food chain, the water chain. All the surrounding countries. You literally got to be a monster to even consider this as a option. And look, this is a translation, him talking, depleted uranium rounds. Yeah, that's not going to go well, the depleted uranium rounds hitting the militias and the boats and anybody that's resisting any targets they see. Round going through the holes of one of those fast boats. And of course, it's going to, you don't need a depleted uranium to go through the round to the hull of those boats, sir. Or whatever the frig you actually are. Piece of shit is more like it. Moron. What a friggin' scumbag. So, that's a nuclear war. Right? That's a nuclear war we got now. It's absurd. It's just hard to comprehend that somebody would sit there and glorify it. And of course, they gotta have a producer to do their job. He's just a YouTuber. He's a pilot. He's ex-military pilot, and anything to promote evil, that guy is right there. His entire site is full of it. Excuse me. But they can't win a debate. They can't have a debate. They just sit there and make these fake assertions, but they never have a debate with somebody that knows what they're talking about. They don't provide any evidence of their assertions. That they don't go there, right? They don't say, well, there's a few issues. You won't say nothing. punch holes through their boats with depleted uranium rounds. Come join the military so I can watch you in the shower. That's why you joined the military, by the way, so you can watch other guys in the shower, right? Hey, whatever, that's what blows your skirt up, buddy. Shouldn't promote genocides on our planet and the contamination of Earth. Our only planet, so you're not defending our planet, you're killing our planet. You didn't join the military to defend a country, you joined it to be a serial killer. And a coward one at that. High in the sky. You're dominance, nobody's shooting back at you. You're the real hero, that's what you were. You're the hero. You're the biggest hero in your own little head. Skip past shit for brains. And just want to look at the guy. You know this is a degenerate. He was a degenerate his entire life. And you can be sure his parents were degenerates. So why are you glorifying the uses of dirty bombs or weapons you cannot turn off as if you didn't know? And one of his lapdogs comes in and goes, brrr. This guy commented a lot. Clearly he's hooked up with shit for brains up there. I commented back, hi stupid. Unusual amount of smoke billowing from reactor 3 and 4. Look at the building over there. I put the picture there. Now, when you put a picture there and you say there's an unusual amount of smoke there, does that make sense now? Because what you're looking at is an explosion. And reactor 4, of course, doesn't even exist, same as reactor 3. Right? And shit for brains, he's the same type of person, right? With total disregard for everything as long as he gets his paycheck. Don't give a shit about anything or anybody as long as he gets lots of money and as long as he feels like he's special. Special. He's over there on YouTube telling everybody how cool it's going to be to shoot up cities with dirty bombs so he can protect you from people who might get dirty bombs. Worker at reactor number 3 says nuclear fuel is gone from the spent fuel pool. Great skepticism that any pellets remain. Does anybody really think anything remains? You're talking about 9 reactor cores ejected out of the buildings. We have an extinction event because of it. And we have max super shit for brains promoting releasing more radioactivity into the environment. Dirty bombs. Entire nuclear core injected into the environment. And people can't wrap their minds around it. They're like, oh, okay, have a nice day. I got to go back and watch something stupid on TV. British government deeply involved in blatant conspiracy designed to manipulate the truths. Very effective attempt to calm reporting of true stories of Fukushima. Now, we cover quite a few. In fact, I have a folder that I should try to dig up if I can remember after, that I put together to actually articulate that story. And we never did get it done because we're good people, so it's hard. We do hard work. All Mac's got to do is sit there and be a piece of shit for a few minutes. Everybody donates to him. The military takes care of him again on top of that. And he gets to pretend to everybody on the aircraft and the stewardess and everybody that he's a good person. When he's the farthest thing from a good person. Like he couldn't win a single debate. And he promotes the most evil thing imaginable. There are Congress and Senate members that are trying to get rid of the A-10 Warthog because it's a dirty bomb factory machine, right? And the amount being produced to maintain these fleets is surreal. Like I say, there's a story we usually show here, but I haven't got it at my fingertips tonight, which is unusual, I know. Where the U.S. government had a tender to dispose of 36 million dirty bombs, munitions, like for the A-10 Warthogs, and because they have new, better, more eviler bullets. So how many times have they done that? Like if I got and we've showed that headline a lot, then how many times do we not see the story over the years, right? Where they've done the exact same things, where Like the bullets don't have a half-life of millions of years, but militarily wise, they'll get rid of them as quick as they can because it's all about buying them and using them so they don't have to store the dirty material, the radioactive anthropogenic material for millions of years. The industry's so evil and so many people out there willing to play a part to get and you can only get the job. And the poll tonight is in honor of Max the Monster, a pro-nuclear evil degenerates, scum, because they work in industry demand, they have no soul. And I think that's the only way you can describe Max as a person who has no soul. He has no soul at all. A pro-nuclear evil degenerate scum because they don't have a soul. Souls are real. They're actually real. Residents forced to dump nuclear waste in parks and forests. TEPCO should hire Max. Max Afterburner. Residents forced to dump nuclear waste in parks and forests. Think about that kind of responsibility. That's what Max wants to do in the forests of every other country. Just put all the dirty bombs in those countries. Because he's a pilot. I notice they're not something to talk to. Like if someone confronts them, what do they do? Right? Because they can't back up their lies. So they never hang out with anybody that is going to question them, most likely. 45% of kids in Fukushima had thyroid exposures, up to 50 millisieverts, 50,000 microsieverts per year. Half a microsievert is considered a nuclear wasteland. What's 50,000, I wonder? Like if you took Max Afterburn and tried to bring him to Fukushima, he would literally kill you. He'd pick up a rock and smack you in the head with it and get out of there. Because he knows better. He's not stupid. He's just a monster. He's a real-life monster. TEPCO begins dumping contaminated water into the sea. Now, I'm only laughing. That's the gallows laugh. There's a couple of different things going on right there. I'll explain it to you as we're getting along here. Now, I would have done a show on Friday, and I would have done a show on Saturday, because that was my intentions. But I had a few issues. We had a windstorm here and tore up some shit. And I've been crippled for 2 days at the end of each day in the misery. They're working in a 100K storm, trying to secure one of my buildings before it blew away on me. I tore the roof off. I tore all the tarps off. I'll show you pictures later. Because I got all my equipment inside of it, right? So I got no choice but to get out there and try to salvage it. And we picked up a new tarp the weekend, a nice one, expensive one. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Is not the word. TEPCO begins dumping contaminated water into the sea. But I couldn't get that till the next day, and the wind dropped out, right? TEPCO begins dumping contaminated water in the sea. When you look at these buildings, do you think it... Because, see, what they want you to believe is nothing got into these buildings. Now, what you're looking at is stumps of 190-foot buildings, 65-meter, 19-story buildings. These are stumps. At the top of these buildings were 8 reactor cores, or more. They produce 5.5 reactor cores a decade. These are 3 decades plus old. And they don't have a repository anywhere on the planet, let alone in shit-for-brains Japan. Japan's the last people should have been allowed to have a nuclear reactor. They're just unbelievable degenerate people, man. The nuke industry there will give Max a run for his money. These are degenerates of degenerates. Max is just your average monster degenerate. Fukushima Reactor 3, Fukushima Reactor 4. Officially, that never happened. It's too bad Max did happened. The world would be better if Max never happened. And go back in time and fix that. That'd be pretty cool. TEPCO begins dumping contaminated water into the sea. That's 2013. But remember, allegedly, they never start doing it till 2023. Nothing got out of these buildings till 2023. But that is 2013. That picture there. There's 4 of these buildings with 9 reactor cores missing in each building. Not missing, but atomized and aerosol and atomized and ionized everything, and that's all gone into the environment. We have an extinction event. Remember the pictures I showed you earlier of the emaciated whales? It's not just whales. Go check out the live streams over the last couple of months and you'll see what I'm talking about right quick in the just the thumbnails. TEPCO has begun dumping groundwater pumped out of a set of wells inland from the reactors into the Pacific. So on the west side of the reactors. So the turbines are closest to the sea, then it's the reactors, then it's the common spent fuel pool, administration. So what are they talking about? Wells that are inland. So they dug a whole bunch of wells all over the site to trace where the radioactive emissions during, because they were flooding these buildings. Now that was to manipulate you into believing that the fuel pools were intact, right? Because every 12, 14 years, and the fuel pools have no containment. Anyway, they're always hemorrhaging just monstrosity amount of radioactive fallout every 24 hours, every minute. So think of a reactor, it splits atoms to boil water to power 1 million homes and businesses. So these buildings with 9 reactors are still splitting atoms, no longer to boil water for 9 million homes and businesses, and it's released up those tall, skinny stacks 24 hours a day. It's about 120,000 liters out of each pool. Each building has 2 pools. And so you got 6 buildings doing that on the site before they melt it down. Right, so that's 12 fuel pools times 120,000 liters. So 12 times 120,000 liters. So, there's 1.2 million liters a day going up the tall, skinny stacks. And each liter is hundreds of trillions of anthropogenic man-made isotopes. And the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rod is the curium isotopes. Now don't forget, you got 400 plus nuclear plants worldwide doing the exact same thing all day, every day. And university fuel pools and the national laboratories. And then you got the depleted uranium concoctions they have sprayed into our environment. I played some of that documentation earlier. They dumped 200 tons of groundwater. Really? That's it? That's all they got out of the buildings is 200 tons? Right, so these cover stories are important because we're 15 years down the road and we're looking at an extinction event. Yesterday as a test, really, you really think they got any control over the emissions from something like this? Remember, there's 4 buildings like this. We're talking about 36 reactor cores. We're talking about each reactor core is much bigger, say 1,000 times emissions compared to Chernobyl. For each reactor core, there's 36 reactor cores. And so Chernobyl was a graphite reactor, it was a new reactor, it was a small reactor. It didn't have decades of reactor cores stored at the top of the buildings. These are pure uranium plutonium reactors. Number 3 was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor on top of that. Each of these 2 buildings alone is 18 reactor cores missing. And so you're talking about 4,000 Chernobyls acknowledged emissions, minimum, comparison. These are absurdly, now think about radioactive fallout. It's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison on top of that. And it's in your body pulsing energy. So this is not a game. So people like Max shit for brains, that bothers me. That irritates me. Probably more than most people. I had a disaster the week, and for me that was a disaster. I have to struggle, and I'm not even healthy, right? It's just not fair that I have to struggle the way I have to struggle. It's not fair. I'm struggling to try to do the moral and ethical thing for 25 years. right? I've never wavered, and I have a lot of health issues. I've never ever. I had 7 stents put in, and I got out of the hospital the next day, and I sat here and done a show. It wasn't a big show, but I've done a show. After 21 days in intensive care, I would have died the day before if they didn't do the surgery. And the next day, I'm doing a live show because that's how important it is. I took a couple of days off then, but this industry is completely out of control. And the only people getting any traction are the evil people. They're put on a pedestal. They're given every opportunity conceivable. They have money thrown at them constantly, all day, every day. They don't even have to try. They have producers and everybody at their fingertips. Everybody's willing to help Max Afterburner be a piece of shit. Yay, world. We live in a beautiful world. If we didn't have nuclear, our planet would be amazing. It'd be even more amazing if we didn't have people like Max Rearburn or whatever the fuck his name is. It's not his real name. Let me see what I got there. I just don't I can't comprehend. He's Ryan, there he goes, a.k.a. Max Afterburner. And he don't even have his last name there. He don't even have his last name there. He won't even... He's so gutless. He's such a coward. He won't even put his last name there. He hides away. And then promotes the most evilest thing on the planet. He's a former F-15, F-16 Thunderbird pilot, F-15E combat fighter pilot. He's never had combat. He's never done a dogfight with another aircraft from another country. He just went in and bombed people that couldn't fight back. That's all he's ever done. He's a commercial airline pilot. Oh, did he mention he's a pilot? Now he flies Airbuses, Boeing 737s. Links below to give him money. All kinds of links. Wow. And he's just a gutless, spineless. And that's the end of him. Now just take him out of that equation. We'll get on with the rest of the show. And I apologize for not getting a show in Friday or Saturday. I can tell you. It wasn't because I didn't want to. It's really something because, like at the end of the day, I'm trying to walk around in my house here, and I'm completely hopeless. I can't do anything. And I'm in agony. We still got to challenge this industry. And I can't comprehend after all this time. I always felt that, the other bloggers out there would eventually come across this equation, and they would find people like, hopefully me, and then they would have enough information to, where it can pass on the baton, where they can, help. And that's never happened. Never happened. I'm talking about the bloggers out there, right? That never happened. So that always shocked me. We got James. Took it to a different level and produced music to help articulate, which is an incredible way. That's like that song we started off with tonight. You tell me that's not a freaking fantastic song? Like you go back and check all of my videos, and you'll see this amazing song every time, and beginning and ends usually, if I don't screw up. Can you imagine 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 people like that going to war against this industry? This industry would fall. It can barely handle just a few people criticizing it, and has to ostracize them from all corners of the web, right? And then frig with them non-stop. They claimed it has the same radiation levels as nearby rivers, but did not say what the level was or the actual substance in the water. Well, you don't want to drink any water out of Japan. And it's just sad that people are not aware a long time ago of how toxic this stuff is. TEPCO still needs to gain the approval of the government. Yeah, right. TEPCO, a corporation. What are you going to do, put it up to Earth? They can't contain anything. Everything goes directly into the ocean or into the air. You can't contain any there. But they paint this incredible story where TEPCO is somehow fucking stoic or something. Shitco also admitted that the radiation levels at the edge of the plant grounds could go up. Gee, I wonder what could make that happen. 36 reactors melting down at one time? Let me see here. But I mean, that shocked me tonight to see somebody promoting the A-10 Warthogs deplete uranium munitions going into soft targets. Being used at all is just evil beyond any kind of... There's no serial killer worse than the A-10 Warthog pilot. They kill for billions of years with the radioactive fallout. And they know what they're doing. They're not freaking stupid. They're not naive. They're not gullible. They're not complacent. So TEPCO, if you want to get into the story, you go over to LinkedIn, you got to sign in. They claim it has the same radiation levels nearby reverse. Let's keep getting another story up here. Well water detected. Surface with a paper cup. TEPCO with a paper cup. Which and this particular media is not known for being smart, M-A-R-T, smart. TEPCO's enormous water problem. Enormous! TEPCO also admitted that the radiation, again, right, they send you over, the water is being moved to above ground mental, like, the water is fuel particulates. You can't put it in a container, in a tank, because the gammas, the alphas, neutrons, and betas will come coalesce in a spot, and then you got a chain reaction. Because you remember, a chain reaction doesn't need oxygen. It's the wrong technology. This technology should never have been unleashed on humanity because there's no species on the planet with an autoimmune trigger that can defend against it. It gets in your body has to attack it every second for the rest of your life with white blood cells to try to build a sarcophagus, a tumor around it. And because it pulses energy in every direction, almost at the speed of light, no matter what kind of emitter we're talking about, wrecking chromosomes and cells, DNA, permanent lesions to the organs of all the species. But all that damage each second, your body tries to repair that, and it can't keep up with that. And at the same time, it attacks the source forever and ever and ever. So your immune system is immediately compromised. The bioaccumulation, right, orders of magnitudes don't belong taking place. So this was 2013, April the 30th. Now, there was no ELP system. There was no Areva system. There was no Siri systems. You can't filter this stuff. You can't filter out gammas or filter out betas. You can do it with a very sophisticated cyclone system to use for aggregating weapons isotopes, right? But that's 10, 12,000. What they're talking about, you know how you ever seen the gold miners where they're using mats at the end of the solutions to collect the fine particulates of gold? They were actually suggesting they were doing this with cesium. They were aggregating cesium because cesium, as everybody knows, is the only one you got to worry about. The reality of it is that's the farthest from the truth as you can get. That's the same song and dance they've been feeding everybody everywhere for 80 years. Right, the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rod is curium isotopes. Curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium. Plutonium kills all the animals of multiple tumors. You get mostly bone tumors, but liver and lung tumors. You get plutonium, you're going to get 3 tumors if you live long enough. Right? So your immune system is compromised in so many different ways immediately. You're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses. Contaminated water problem at Fukushima Daiichi have been plaguing the plant since day one. like, for me, and for anybody that's around here regularly, obviously, right? These kind of statements are actually disturbing. Because the truth is much worse, unfortunately. This is the Neptunium-239 distribution worldwide over 20 days post-Fukushima. Now, this is not... this doesn't include the inventories from Medusa, Reactor 3, and its ugly twin, number 4, at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. And I mean, this building is incredible, all the way to the ground. There's only a stump left of a 190-foot, 19-story building, 65-meter buildings. All the buildings were the same. So the Neptunium-239 decays to plutonium-239 after 2.5 days. And there's 10 decays. So everything is after 25 days is decayed to plutonium-239. Now, models is 20 days old and 21 days old. So in reality, that's a plutonium model, 239, because that's what it is. That's got a 24,000-year half-life. But the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rod is not the plutonium. That's even more frightening. Just bear with me. Just want to bring up one headline. There we go. This one? Yeah. Oh, crap. Might as well go the whole round there, I suppose. Because it makes more sense if you're trying to educate people. Curium isotopes are the major byproduct in the irradiated fuel, nuclear reactor fuel. Forget about alpha-emitting radionuclides. It's curium isotopes. Okay. Plutonium is not the major byproduct, but it's pretty insignificant. It's not insignificant, but significant. I know those two words almost ran together. So 144 beagle dogs and puppies. This was the U.S. Navy, who... Schifferbrains worked for him, I bet you. Tumors in the lung, skeleton, and liver after 3 years. Bone tumors in 93 dogs were the most common cause of death. Then liver tumors and lung tumors. Findings in dogs suggest similar dose-related biological effects in humans. Now, the problem with that is that humans are 50 times less efficient than an animal at removing the plutonium from their bodies. So you're 50 times more likely to die than all the dogs, and all the dogs died. Now, the biggest byproduct of radioactive fuel rod is curium isotopes, and curium and lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium. So, therefore, this model means you are breathing, and your children, and your friends, and your families, everybody in your communities, everybody on the planet, every species was breathing in plutonium, and will be for the next 240,000 years. Because you got to appreciate how much was in each of these buildings. It could have been 250,000 pounds on that site of plutonium that was released into the environment. So that's why we're seeing an extinction event. Like there is food out there for whales, which not a lot of it, right? But the bioaccumulation, they have leukemia. They can't uptake nutrition anymore. That's why they're showing up in late-stage starvation / emaciation. Yeah, I'm busted up. I'm doing good today. I just got to take 4 or 5 days and just do the shows, right? But nothing else. And I think we had our last snowstorm last night. Now, you'll see the pictures coming up in a little bit from the shed, but there was no snow on the ground over the last 5 or 6 days. All the snow disappeared with rain and warm weather. Right now it's minus 14 wind chill. There's extreme temperatures, but there was literally no snow on. Well, there's snow banks, but there was no snow on the ground when I was working Friday and Saturday in the heavy winds on Friday. Well, we pulled it off, so that's all that matters. But, I mean, man, I could not, for 4 or 5 hours until I went to bed that night and woke up the next morning, my feet were burning. I could barely walk. I can barely walk across the room. Like I got a Segway there I can use, right, to get certain things done if I got to, and I couldn't even stand on that because you break your neck, you can't get your balance, your feet are so bad, right? Because I'm still recovering from gout on top of that, which is working. I'm getting through it, but I wasn't expecting that amount of pain for the last couple of days. Sorry I'm talking about it. I didn't mean to bring it up in that context. It's just still a problem for me for another 3 or 4 or 5 days. Hopefully I can get past it. In recent months, the problem have once again shown themselves to be too much for TEPCO to deal with the plant continue. TEPCO shouldn't be there. TEPCO's not a decommissioned authority. They're an operator. They hire people to do the job. The nuclear industry, the nuclear regulatory agencies should be running the show, right? The universities produced this nightmare. The schools of mass destruction should be in charge of this. We should have sacrificed 1 million nuclear students, including people like Max we talked about earlier. They should be sent into the Fukushima nuclear meltdown so they couldn't be a curse on humanity. An unusual amount of smoke coming out of that building. Gee, I wonder why. Oh, that's not the picture I wanted. I was experimenting. I was trying to make the picture full width. But here's what the original picture started off with. So that's reactor 3, but that's the fake cover above it. That's reactor 4, and that's the fake cover above. So if you look at reactor 4 right now, this is what it looks like. You can see there's nothing there. But officially, everything is perfect. I'll show you a picture of what officially this looks like. That's the official picture, by the way. It's very confusing, I know. Don't worry, it's much more confusing yet. You'll love the next picture. I mean, it's insane. You know, you had all kinds of journalists claiming they're at the top of reactor 3 and reactor 4. That's reactor 3 over there, or 4 over there, and this is CNN Prostitute claiming it's on top of reactor 4, 150 feet above the stump. Now, all the media, the big media, there's a lot more than this, right? A lot more than this, too. We're claiming they were 150 feet above that stump because Fukushima is an extinction event. And so just trying to cover a couple of stories, and I got just hundreds of them here for tonight. And how many am I going to get through, I wonder? 5, 10? Because it's so complicated. So you have, the average person doesn't have much hope. And you have to treat every show like there's a fraction of the people don't know the subject too well, or even at all. And so you have to try to, but you know, reinforcing the nuances, the minutiae, the details, is never going to go astray anyway, right? Because repetitively instilling that into the people that are paying attention it will have enormous payoff down the road because they'll be so articulated. My theory was I can make people articulated on the details and the nuances, then I win. We win. Planet Earth wins, right? As long as there's somebody out there can stand tall, right? And in the face of absurd opposition and beat the lies back with the truth. That's how it'll play out. Because you're going to have 4,000 people there that hate you, but when you give them the truth, all of a sudden, they never heard that narrative before. They had no concept. It doesn't quite resonate, but they'll start to appreciate that they don't have an answer. They never thought about having a debate. They've never seen a debate. The industry doesn't have debates. So the industry exists only because people don't hear the other side of the story. Right? So we try to fill that gap. We're the only people in anywhere on the planet that's ever produced a educational program, so to speak. period. That's the facts, right? Just provide the documentation from your assertions, right? I made this picture 13 years ago. And every time you hear the word fake news, I'm like, hey, nobody uses that picture. If you're doing a video, you can shoot a little video, you can turn the phone around, snap that, and talk, and then turn it back around, talk to yourself, and say, well, look at all the people pretending they're on top of the building. That's ABC Australia, Cecilia Vega, by the way, in case you're wondering. Try to jump. They tell so many lies in each story, you have to challenge every lie. How's that going to work out? Elps water into the Pacific. So this is 2013. Why would you talk about Elps into the Pacific in 2013 when Elps wasn't even finished? They didn't even start to build Elps system until 2013. And then once you start talking about the subject, you kind of got no choice. Let me give you an example of what I mean. You gotta wonder with pictures, but it doesn't matter. They just announced recently, 2014, they think they finally have the Alps decontamination system operational. It was 2014, August, late 2014. They just started the fourth quarter. These little details matter. So how can you, in 2013, filter something when you didn't even have it working? And reality was they didn't officially have it work until late 2015. All the tanks were filled in 2013. So how does that work? And I'll show you a picture of the ELP system in 2013. Because I'm that kind of a guy. Excuse me. Yeah, I wasn't sure I'm going to get a show in tonight. I was like, I got to do a show. We got to get something out. This is an anniversary. We already missed 2 shows. If we wanted to have 15 shows, we're still going to have 15 shows. We wanted to have 15 shows because this is the 15th anniversary and a catalyst of an extinction event. So February 11, 2013, they just started building ELP system. So how then, in April, or the filtration system when they never even started? You can't filter it anyway. How are you going to filter the high rads water? So like high rads, you can't filter that because you can never change the filter. You can never get near the filter. Your organs will melt after 10 minutes if you get it within proximity of the filters. Right? It doesn't matter how stoic or brave or stupid you are. Instead, someone at TEPCO made a decision to put highly contaminated water into the storage ponds. Highly contaminated water. You can't filter this stuff. You can't dilute it. You're just going to spread it. Go ahead and take a 45-gallon drum of oil and spread it in your house. And then take a garden hose and turn that on for half an hour and spray it around all the floors of your house where the oil, that 45-gallon drums of oil is to. What do you think is going to happen inside your house at that point? Why would nuclear is much worse? Because nobody has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it, the emissions. TEPCO has not released any data on these types of substances in the leaking pond, but there is high potential. TEPCO shouldn't exist. The reason TEPCO exists is so you can blame TEPCO instead of the nuclear industry and the International Atomic Energy Agency and IRPAs and UNSCLEAR and IPRC and besides the tritium leaking from the ponds. So like to invoke tritium at a nuclear meltdown is not very helpful. Everything is tritiated because of radioactive fallout on the entire planet now, all water. You're made of water, by the way. Plutonium curium could also be leaking from the pond that was used to hold a reverse osmosis sludge water. Like, you can't reverse. This is not a swimming pool or a hot tub, right? Reverse osmosis does not work on radiation. There's no science on the planet that supports. But this is what you're dealing with: evil. And people that are just evil for the sake of being evil. That's why they got the job, because they were that kind of psychic. I shouldn't use. A recent NHK documentary showed a series of dry bed underground rivers that flow into the plant grounds. 2 of them appear to go on either side of Unit 1 and 4 reactors. They built the site on an ancient riverbed that has been active for hundreds of thousands of years. All right, so they put shale, they built it up, and they do this all in nuclear plants. So if you have a China syndrome type event where it melts down under the building, then it hits the shale, the wash water, that washes down through the shale to the river, which will carry it into the ocean or the rivers that they're situated. They're always situated on an incline for that exact attribute, right? These underground riverbed structures could be rooted for contaminated water to leave the plant grounds and end up. It could be roots. No, that could be. They're built specifically. That's their oh shit plan. They may be harder to block out. Every nuclear site has this attribute. These may be harder to block since how are you going to block something 100 feet down? How are you going to block radiation? Now it's going to build up, become liquefaction. You can't even get back on the site. Mysterious roots for continued radioactive contamination. You really just want to pull the head off of some of these people. Shit down their neck, because when you look at this thing here, everything was gone in 6 days. So talking like they're trying to work out an equation is mind-numbingly insane. And so this configuration of the site doesn't work anymore because there's so many things have changed. Like the construction of the site is absurd what they've done. Like up where the original gate west, southwest. These are big sites, right? The wells have shown tritium is already mixed with groundwater uphill from the plant. Really, tritium is. I've never seen a model of tritium, but I've sure seen a lot, and we show a lot. I mean, that's cesium-137 after 23 days. It's the French government. Now it's based on a spike, on an actual documentation from detection networks of 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137, which pulses energy 600 feet for each isotope. At 1 million, you have 1 million, and they pulse to 600 feet. So in a cubic meter of air, you have 1 million to 10 million of these cesium-137 isotopes pulsing energy 600 feet every second. These are death plumes for every species, insects, birds, spiders in particular. Small levels of cesium were found in the wells, really small levels. Well, we found massive amounts in Canada, United States, per cubic meter of air, but you only found small amounts at ground zero, did you? There's so many people will sell their souls, and that's how they make a living. Their parents, degenerate parents done it. Their degenerate parents done it. Are pro-nuclear, evil, degenerate scum because they work in an industry that demands they have no soul. So whoever gave me a no was in denial. They know I'm right. They're degenerate, they're evil, degenerate scum. They're not pro-nuclear morons. You don't get the job. You got to be an evil, degenerate scum. You can deny it all you want, but that's the truth, though. Everybody knows this is true. A pro-nuclear evil, degenerate scum because they work in an industry that demands, so they become desensitized, right? They're so used to evil, Yeah, that's the job, right? They, they have to. They have to switch off to keep the job, and they won't. They're already psychologically damaged. Typically, that's why they were even looking at nuclear in the first place. They seen an opportunity to be evil, and when that talent, that's a talent to be evil, right? It's not a good talent, but it's a talent that exists, so to speak. And the industry is looking for that talent, and they're going to get key positions. They're going to progress quickly too. If the more evil you are, the quicker, the more attention you're going to get, the more money you're going to make right away. So then you have an incentive to be evil, and you have no incentive to not be evil. So when you have no incentive not to be evil, you have a huge incentive to be evil. What happens? People are weak, right? The people that come here regularly, there's a very small bunch of people that cannot be compromised. They've decided, rightfully so, that they're going to take the high ground, the moral ground, which is the most difficult ground, the most. And then the industry hates you because they can never be a good person, and they know you're a good person. So that makes it even more harder for them to look at you or even acknowledge you. The only problem is a lot of them have over the years had come to my shows expecting to find flaws in my story so they can exploit that, right, to use the bludgeon opposition, right, to the nuclear industry. But that didn't, they ended up getting indoctrinated, and some of them end up having pains of conscience. They've never experienced that before, see? They've never seen the truth. They've never heard the truth. They've never been confronted with the truth. TEPCO wants to dump the contaminated water in the sea. So far, they have not been given approval. Like when you cover the entire planet with massive amount of radioactive fallout, and then at the other side of your mouth, you're saying that they haven't dumped anything into the ocean. Like, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. They have no control. That's over a single prefecture. The food was banned from 14 prefectures, including Tokyo. Like 30 million one-ton bags. You can circle the planet. If you stack the bags alongside of each other, you're circling the planet multiple times, non-stop with one-ton bags. But we should have been picking up the topsoil of the entire planet forever. Food's banned by 14 prefectures by 55 countries. So, there's a different administration typically every 4 years, right? So a lot of those administrations will remove the restrictions because that's how they got the job. The nuclear industry that's how they work, right? They're very methodical. It could take them decades. Radiation is not clear if this is backflow from the reactor building. It's not clear. It's not clear if something is getting out of the buildings. It's not clear if the radiation they're finding is from the backflows from the reactors that don't exist anymore. It's not clear. It's not clear if this is backflow, small levels of cesium. This is the French government spiked radiation levels in the United States and Canada, of course, spiked to over 1 million times normal. The IRS and the French government. These are catastrophic numbers. These are unprecedented numbers. We've never seen anything like that before. And why would you? No nuclear bomb could do this. This is a model based on 8 days, and that's the model based on 23 days. That's the same model. This is a catastrophic event. And that really upset me to see somebody promoting dirty bombs so the terrorists don't get dirty bombs and attack you. That's what they're saying. Whatever dirty bombs are setting off over there will blow over here. We'll end up in your aquifers. We'll end up in your food, in your farmlands. We'll end up in your children's playgrounds. We'll end up in their own bodies. They're idiots. You got to be an idiot. Or just a monster. TEPCO wants to dump the contaminated water into the sea. So far, they have not been given approval, and the idea is meeting resistance. So the idea is, right, nothing's getting into the sea. Right? That's their version of that narrative is nothing's getting into the sea. Nothing's getting into the sea. You have to be pretty gullible or pretty indoctrinated to believe that lie. Oh, there's that story I was looking for, by the way. Little angel helping me out here tonight. This is 2019. The A-10 Warthog. In the United States, studied the question of disposal of 35.7 million ammunition with a core of depleted uranium. They're not tipped, they're not coated, they're pure uranium. And they're contaminated with americium, plutonium, strontium, curium, and every other isotope. They have every single attribute and many plus of a dirty bomb. So the reason they're getting, and they're showing you an A-10 Warthog, by the way. So the 38 million, 35.7 million rather, they just want disposed of. How do you dispose of dirty bombs, folks? There's no repository where that went to. That's going to a private contractor to dispose of into your ecosystem. So they can replace it with another 35.7 million dirty bombs. And most of these are made at McAllister's manufacturing in Oklahoma, which is, they have 4 major bomb factories up there. There's 1,000 buildings, and all they make is depleted uranium munitions, dirty bombs. But they're going to protect you from dirty bombs. Well, they spray dirty bombs everywhere. These are lunatics, by. Fukushima. Now, officially inside of these reactors, that's what it looks like. Inside of this reactor over there, 150 feet above it, it looks like that. You're like, no, don't, Dana. Well, you try telling that to these people. Try telling it to the industry that's stalking me all the time. There's 4 sides of reactor 4. So at the top of that building, don't worry, everything's perfect. That's where all the fuel reactor cores and the fuel pools and the reactors are to at the top of the building. So you got all the major media saying they're at the nuclear meltdown. There's 4 nuclear meltdowns. And the reality of it is all the whales have starved to death. Every different species worldwide. And in about 4 years, there will be no whales. And then the lie. So we need a war. We've been talking about that for the last year or so. We need a major event. So anybody hearing the rumors of Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi, hasn't shown up for quite a long time. There was an official press release from his office, which was really bizarre. They took it down. It was unconfirmed that he was dead. So they took that down a few hours later, apparently. But it also, or an hour later, whatever it was, they also said that they were trying to get in contact with him. So this is his office. And this is after many days of nobody seeing him. His brother was killed. His bomb shelter was hit. His house was destroyed. There was an AI picture where they were showing you his right hand. They were saying had a lot of the propaganda machines were saying his right hand, right? It was his left hand was showing 6 fingers. That was AI. Or it could be real. It's hard to say with Benny. You see all these whales that have starved to death in every species, and the starvation is absolute. That's a blue whale up there. That should weigh 400,000 pounds. If you were stood on the other side of that, I would see your kneecaps, or your knees, right? This should weigh as much as 10 transport trucks. But instead, what you learn is 25 or 30,000 pounds of organs, skeleton, and skin, and all the fat and blubber is completely gone. Everything gone. All the muscle is gone. Totally. All the species. It's just. But hey, don't worry. They're gonna bomb the boats with the fast boats with depleted uranium. Depleted uranium is going through the holes of the fast boats. These dirty bombs, shouldn't be used ever. And allegedly, we're only going to be using hardened targets that they absolutely had to penetrate for the security of America. Or 7,500 lobbyists at AirPac, whatever comes first. But it's that moronic attitude, that inability to appreciate, or just that ability to be evil. TEPCO unable to bring the contaminated water issues under control 2014. The Advanced Liquid Processing Systems ALPS has yet to function. The common thread with all the people they interviewed was that the current entity is way over their heads, not capable of dealing with the disaster. TEPCO's not a decommissioned authority. It shouldn't even be there in the first place. Oh, that's the building. So that's a new tarp we put on it. 300 plus. And thank goodness we raised almost $300 from James Lucid and $30 from Kevin G, which was perfect. Now, this doesn't look anything like it did the day before. That was the next day. We put a temporary cover over it because there's plywood on top of that, and that green tarp up there, I had that over the plywood to protect this stuff from getting, from wearing, from rubbing, right? And all the plywood was stripping off. When I happened to look out the window, I was gusting really heavy from the west. I was like, geez, I should check on the shed because we don't really get wind from that direction. That's the only direction so that's 24 feet by 12 feet, right? But I have all my equipment in there. I have an absurd amount of important equipment tied up in that. And that was nasty, man. It doesn't look nearly as bad as it did. All of that was flapping around in 100 plus K, much stronger gust. So the piece I got was a huge piece, and which allowed me to wrap the back of it. That's all plywood back there. And we use more straps to reinforce it, so it's much more stiff now. And the same thing down the side. So you can see the strips on the bottom, the 3 by 1 inch strips on the bottom and the top. So you're pulling everything down, so the top is really tight and the sides are really tight. And that gave it some integrity. And then it's got a steel frame. So that front piece is tied into the steel frame. And man, what a relief. I don't know how we managed to save it, but we struggled for hours and hours trying to get a tarp on it. You can imagine, in the heavy winds, what kind of nightmare that was. Tommy went to the shop and got strips and came back. And the next day went to the city. Yesterday went to the city and then spent, because we had a snowstorm coming last night. So now all that's covered in snow. But my feet are still really bad, eh? So when I came in last night, it was around 6:30 or something when I finally finished. I never stopped since the morning, right? Because you had to go to the city and come back. And the day before, it was, I don't know what, it was 4 or 5 hours. Time you ran to time you tried to secure it. And then we had to I had a couple of tarps. You can't just have separate tarps because the wind will get under that too. We managed to secure them with the strips, and then we took it all off. Took everything off yesterday. That's what you're looking at there. And it doesn't look like much, but we have an enormous amount of research and other equipment stored in there. We have all kinds of, we get the skidoos and the bikes and the quads are in there. We have all kinds of other gear. The whole back of it's all shelves and everything, right, of all kinds of limited space, right? And the research operation, we've crewed a lot of research material. The bikes are good for the spring and summer and fall because for insects, and you can get down into all the little areas, right? So I've upgraded one of my bikes, the 650 BMW with more saddlebags, like hard saddlebags. That's been quite the ordeal, that whole process. I'll put them on in the spring now. 35 liters. So I got 4 of them. So I can carry the underwater drone, the flying drone, and other research equipment, lenses and cameras, and hopefully get out there and get some more documentation of the extinction event this year. We really, really, really desperately need outboard motor for the research vessel. That thing's been to Alaska 6 times, right? Even if I can get it running, I got problems, right? I think it's just where I ran it basically into the ground because it was on the ocean 4 to 5 months a year with me for 6 years doing research expeditions to Alaska, and we're using that hard. Excuse me. I kept all the maintenance all the time on, at least that much, right? Always changing the oil on a regular schedule. We went through a lot of props, too. We had to change the leg out. Got the leg rebuilt. Got another leg, rebuilt it into a... Because we're using a 115, which is underpowered, right? And rebuilt it with a 150. Right, because a good friend of mine out in BC was a jet mechanic, a jet aircraft, passenger aircraft mechanic. And so he was just a hell of a good guy. He always jumped in, man. Every time he had a problem that I couldn't solve, I was pretty good. The sludge in these containers can be as high as 3 sieverts an hour, 9 sieverts an hour, just for a single type of isotope. Your organs melt at 3 sieverts per hour. Water storage tanks in Fukushima Daiichi at risk of explosion. Waste storage tanks. Filtered waste containers. You can't filter. So they're legend. These are the filters from the Alps system, actually, right? It's simply not true, by the way. The end result is the highly radioactive sludge in the containers is generating hydrogen gas. Now, hydrogen, when it displaces the oxygen, becomes very volatile. So if you get a spark or introduce oxygen back into a saturated hydrogen environment, it'll actually detonate, like a detonation, right? And a very powerful one at that. The sludge in the containers can be as high as 3 sieverts an hour. But then they talk about 9.6 sieverts an hour just for a single type of isotope, which I'm pretty sure is curium. So there's much more going on in that equation. You can't, so they're showing like a forklift picking this thing up and moving. It doesn't work that way. The forklift driver his organs will melt before he gets to where he's supposed to drop off. Because each of these containers would be just... If it was true, it would be thousands of sieverts. And so 3 sieverts from 12 feet away will kill you within a few minutes. It melts your organ. It melts your kidneys, your liver, your pancreas, your pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline glands. And so these, even if you run away, you still melt. This is not survivable. Now, these types of numbers we're talking about and the time frame for being around them, because it's only the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language, are working in that environment. Container W6 was found to have concentration, really. And who went up and measured that, I wonder? Who walked up there with the Geiger counter and the boss was like 100 feet away going, "Little closer! Little closer! Tell that idiot to get closer!" And so there was probably a whole bunch of homeless guys there in paper suits. And he said, when the guy over there with the Geiger counter drops dead, the next one runs over, picks it up, and gets closer. Ugh. Nobody was measuring it. Nobody's getting close to it. If what they're saying is true, that they're actually filtering it and taking the filters off, it doesn't work that way. The hoses coming from the site, you can't get near that without melting your organs. Do you got any concept? Remember, multiple sieverts per liter before it goes into filtration. So when it goes into filtration, in 20 minutes, you're talking about 1,000 sieverts. Less than 20 minutes. I'm lowballing the reality. I always lowball every facet of it first, right? Because that's just as frightening as the reality. The NRA confirmed that this is very rare. This is a very rare risk. Is that right? The NRA did. Oh, that's nice. Let me show you other things the NRA confirmed. Excuse me. Yeah, so I apologize. I'm not my normal self tonight. My normal asshole self. Oops. Just give me 1 second there. He's bringing up a picture of one of these Medusas. There you go. The NRA also confirmed that nothing got out of both of these buildings till 2023. Yeah, my feet are still a pain in the arse. But see, my biggest fear is I can't do what I'm doing right now. Like, if I don't do any more research or field studies, that'll kill me. But at least, as long as I can do this, I'm contributing, hopefully, to life. If the concentration level is high, spark caused by static electricity causing a container to explode. Well, if it could, it would have. Because there's no quality control at a nuclear meltdown site. There's no scientists there, no academics there. It's just not survivable. And nobody's getting out of there without significant internal damage. There's been 10,000 a year of Fukushima 50s. They're the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and immigrants who don't speak the language. But, sometimes I forget about this one. We do mention it sometimes, but if the concentration level is high, which the whole site is, and there's been what they call lightning strikes going on over the site for many years originally, right? That was static electricity igniting the hydrogen that was being produced all over the site. Because, you ejected the reactor cores right out of the buildings all over the site. And so then you tried to, over a period of time, you buried a lot of that right on the spot with remote-controlled bulldozers. So now that stuff is in the earth. And so they cemented over the earth. They put steel plates on top of that, cemented, and then pavement, and then cemented over that again. More steel plates. Because the homeless were dropping dead everywhere for many years on that site. They never had control of that site for many. They still don't in many places. But that's a really interesting revelation, right? If concentration level is high, spark can caused by static electricity to ignite. So if you're going to, that's another reason why you can't believe them, right? So they said, I think ultimately there was around 4,000 of these stored into one place. So knowing that stacking these, you stand a chance of one of them exploding. So if you stack them all together, one of them explodes, you're gonna light up the rest of them. Not only that, you're gonna have millions of sieverts stacked up over by a building, and you can never get near it. You can never get near it to stack up that many and survive it. In fact, your equipment will malfunction, which brings the question of, was there anything? They were going through the motions because they needed people to believe them, right? Same as the Alps system. They built a system to pump water, but it's not water. They're not mixing water from a nuclear meltdown and there with a glass of water coming out the other end and drinking that. So that means there's nothing going through. It's all show and tell. And they spent $48 billion picking up 1-ton bags of topsoil in the communities and the farmlands. Don't think for a second that they wouldn't hesitate to fake this. And there is legitimate waste here they will be scooping up, and that's what's in those containers. But it's not going to be ELP system. The time frame they're talking about is before the ELP system even existed. Again, always look at the evidence. Do you think that there's non-reactor cores at 150 feet above that building? Do you think there's another non-reactor cores 150 feet above this building, the Medusa, the plutonium mixed oxide reactor? Obviously it's not. But this is what the industry. So when you talk about concentrations, levels are high. Well, how can it not be high at a nuclear meltdown? If you're filtering you're pouring water over nuclear meltdowns, 4 different buildings. That's the story. It's just going to the premises of their version. So you're pouring that water over, and now somehow magically you're vacuuming all of that water up, and that water is going down a hose to a filtration system. It goes through the filtration system, then it goes into the tank. That's the official version. They didn't have a filtration system, so then the original story for the first few years was it's all going into a tanks, and that's why they built 1,000 tanks. The BBC, of course, Rupert Winfield Hayes, in 2013 said all the tanks were full from water, highly radioactive water they pumped up from the aquifers deep underneath Fukushima. Right, so they told so many lies, and every few years then they'd come out with a new version. And so in 2023, the newest version was that nothing whatsoever got into the buildings. None of this happened. They officially got all the fuel at the top of that building, all the fuel at the top of these buildings. So if I sound like a schizophrenic, I'm not. They are. I'm trying to tell their story, their version of what they've done. So this is the 15th anniversary of these lies. So we're getting pretty good at flushing out the lies after all these years. If the concentration is high, a spark of static electricity could cause the buildings to explode. These people are insane, if you ask me. I'm quite proud of myself we made it this far tonight. It's been a rough 2 days for me. I'm just not going to do nothing for the next 4 or 5 days. No matter how tempting it is, just let my feet heal up and get started again, right? Let me see what we got going on here. Because it's crazy. It's crazy when you think about the documentation that we have. Like they'll tell you, oh no, nothing got out. They're not allowed to dump anything into the ocean. Nothing got off the site. And the story is so unbelievable, so heartbreaking. PCO also found that some of the containers with ELP sludge was missing the proper vent valve. Well, everything is vented. Because if you seal it and it rusts, then when the air goes in there, it'll detonate. So this is 2015, May. So now they're saying the ELP system is actually working. Again, you can't filter anthropogenic man-made radiation from a nuclear meltdown, and even more incredibly, is because your fuel particulates will gather up on the bottom, and then you got a chain reaction. You have a criticality, which will melt. And we've seen that at Mayak, we've seen that at Hanford. And they got to show you shit from The Simpsons, for goodness sakes. Insult of insults. One sample of imported fish now, they only acknowledged in iodine-131 of all things, right off the bat. And then cobalt-60, radioactive silver, which is why you don't see spiders anymore. Cesium-134, cesium-137. Like, you can't have any of these without plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium, and curium isotopes are the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rods. Not iodine, which is still prolific. And it was 20 million iodine particles because of the nuclear fuel disintegrating and breaking apart and blowing up in Canada, in British Columbia. You had a study out of Ottawa, this is per liter, you had a study of Ottawa of iodine-129 at 220 million atoms per liter in Canada. Post-Fukushima, you had, for every iodine-131, which was 20 million particles, there's 10 times more 132, 30 times more 133, 31 times more iodine-129, which is backed up by an independent study at 220 million atoms per liter. These are catastrophic numbers just for iodine. And the biggest byproduct of radioactive fuel rod isn't deionized, which is even scarier again. Now, iodine-131 is incredibly effective ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of all the species in humans. But the 132, 133, which are 10 and 30 times more respectively in the same liter, are 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of all species, which means they're producing radioactive hormones for the rest of your lives. Damage is permanent. But in order to have that particular attribute, you got the cesium, which is 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. So that's going to aggregate in the thyroid, adrenaline too. And then, or your muscles and your organs. But curium is the biggest byproduct. That's going to go into bones. So you're talking about every species producing a horrific amount of radioactive hormones and radioactive stem cells forever. So that's the best way to wipe out all the species. Excuse me. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. I'm so busted up, it's not funny. But it's some good to sit here and get a show in tonight. That's pretty well all I can get out of me tonight. We'll start there next time. Japan takes South Korea to the World Trade Organization over food. Fukushima nuclear wasteland food ban. They lost that, right? They won it originally, then they lost it. There's 865,000 extra cancers in Japan in just the first year. Not everybody got health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. Just let me delete all that we already covered. Because otherwise, we go through so much documentation. I got to try. Well, like I'm happy I got 5 shows in last week. I would still be going if I didn't. I mean, you know, those, because we have that building is 5 years old, right? There's plywood on the inside of it. So that was the only saving grace. It never would have lasted this long if it didn't have the plywood on the inside, right? And in the summer now, when things warm up, I'll strip it down and replace the plywood on the top of it. And then put all the tarps back on, get rid of the old stuff or staple it on, and cover it up with underlays of tarps, and then put the finished tarp on the back of it. That tarp is double-sided, and in the center of it is a foam interior. So it's a really, really heavy-duty tarp. You are not going to rip that tarp. That tarp will never rip. And so, you know, in a few years' time, if you don't like if it's getting a bit tattered, which is not likely, you can always take it off and flip it over because it's the same thing on the other side. But it has a thick foam, so it's 3 layers, right? And it's a very tight weave, and so that's why they're so expensive. But I mean, that was the last one that was there, so it was meant to be, you know. Everything worked out the way. If it didn't work out the way it did, it would never happen, right? So I'm like, unbelievable. Again, I'm unbelievably grateful that worked, because I'm telling you right now, that was a rough experience for me. Even if I was doing better, that still would have been a rough experience. But the fact that we pulled it off, 2 brutal days, and so today was more about recovering. And I had to go out and plow snow today, which wasn't hard. It was hard to get it. I couldn't get out of bed till almost 1 o'clock. And I slept again this evening. I almost fell asleep again the night before the show. My body is worn out, right? But I'm doing really good. So I'm back tomorrow night. We'll pick up here tomorrow night. 15th anniversary of Fukushima. I was just checking James' site to see if he posted anything new. He's got. I'll put it up on the screen here now. He came out hard there. His graphics are gotten incredible. The graphics in this one and this one are just, you can't tell the difference. It's unbelievable how good it is. It's unbelievable. And that's a fantastic song there, folks. And BK number 6, that's the Japan newest reactor. He's got some great stuff on that. One of them was about the rats. Because remember, in the United Kingdom, their newest reactor is just polluted. That whole site is polluted with rats. And rats will chew on insulation and wires. And you're talking about I'm not sure, not a million, but 250,000 miles of wires. How many of them has been chewed up by the rats, right? It's incredible points. I'm not going to play either one of them right now. The one we started off was Nuclear Energy Launch Pad. And because I had a long few days, I'm going to be self-centered. I want to hear, there's got so many great songs. I want to hear, I'm not going to say it because everybody is probably guessing it. We'll see if you're right. I want to hear either Nuclear Overton Window, which I love. It's just fantastic, eh? And Less Than a Gram, for instance, I love that song, man. Meltdown Queen, I love that song. There's so many classics now. It's surreal. So we'll close it out on a Nuclear Overton Window. Your last chance. Hi, everybody. Last chance to vote on the poll. Are pro-nuclear evil degenerate scum, because that's who they are, because they work in an industry that demand they have no soul, which is the employees. Like, I'm not saying it to be mean per se. I'm saying it because we have the evidence. This is an absolute fact. It's not an opinion at all. It's pretty unusual for me to have an opinion because it's an educational program, so I don't really go that way. I usually just stick with what we can prove. I'm going to sit back with you and enjoy this song. And just let me make sure it's in high quality, because YouTube. Yeah, it's in high quality, because YouTube is a pain in the arse sometimes. So I'm tickled to death we got a show tonight. I love it. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody on the next show. Take care, everybody.
Those who decide told us there was no alternative. They said the demand was fixed. They said reliability needs scale, and scale won't wait. They said firm power, constant power. Said the future needs it now. They called it a renaissance. Said the decision was already made. They said delay was danger. They said review was over. This is how the nuclear Overton window began to narrow. Those who decide talked about solutions, talked about schedules, but not about keeping what remains when the generation ends. They talked about storage for now, they talked about fixes ahead. They said the process was technical, not ours. They didn't talk about the horizon, they didn't name who stays accountable. The nuclear Overton window never held the long term. Asking slowed things down, then caution cost too much. Consent became friction, so it was pushed aside. The nuclear Overton window moved again, from open debate to settled position. Rules were shortened, reviews rushed. Governance turned into something to move through. The window didn't shatter, the push continues. Here stands the nuclear Overton window, not cracked, not broken, held open on purpose. Not a future to keep reopening, not a decision to keep revisiting. This must be decided, this must be carried, this must not be passed forward without an end in sight. Remember this moment. The nuclear Overton window must close. Not paused, not deferred, entered into practice with consent. This should not remain unresolved. This is what we must remember. This is what we must remember.